Well, FEMA has been busy in Western North Carolina managing all the different pieces and parts so that aid can be brought to people in need. We are joined by John Mills, the FEMA External Affairs Operations Liaison. Their team is still out west hoping survivors recover from Helene. He is in Raleigh. Let's talk first about this because we want to know what your team is seeing during the Helene response.
Tanya, thanks again for having me back. There have been really some significant progress being made just in the last few days, with reports coming in from cell providers of 80% or more of cellular service being restored in a lot of these areas. FEMA is working directly with disaster survivors. I just checked some numbers for you. We've already approved now more than 51,000 households for FEMA individual assistance money. So that's money for serious needs, money for people to help them if they've been displaced from their homes, money for home repairs, rental assistance, and other needs like replacing personal property. That money is already being direct deposited, and we've already provided about $60 million so far, and that number is still rising every day.
Yeah, I know there were a couple of people who said, well, how are people supposed to get money? Well, you deposit it into their accounts, and most people are doing mobile banking. But if not, you guys are actually laying out the money to like the hotels or the rental property for them to be able to stay?
There are a lot of different aspects of this. So if someone applies with FEMA and they let us know their specific needs, for example, their home unfortunately was destroyed, they don't know what they're going to do next. They may not have anywhere to go but a shelter or staying with family and friends. We can help them get into a hotel. In some cases, people are paying for that hotel themselves, and then they can come to FEMA for lodging reimbursement money. In some cases, FEMA is notifying those survivors, and we are directly paying a hotel that the survivor and that household chooses on their own to lessen the burden on that family. And as of today, we have more than 1,000 households, 1,000 families staying in hotels that FEMA is paying directly. We also have many dozens of disaster survivor assistance team members in a number of the affected counties. They're meeting with survivors in the shelters. Then they're also working with local emergency management at the county level to identify the best neighborhoods for them to canvass. Some neighborhoods have just so much destruction, it's not really appropriate to canvass in those areas, but they are going into neighborhoods at the direction of county emergency management and how they're prioritizing those, so we can meet survivors where they are and help them apply for assistance.
Our hearts are certainly looking towards Florida, as we know that they are, having impact of another hurricane. And so the question for a lot of folks in North Carolina is, are crews going to be pulled from North Carolina to help in Florida?
The FEMA administrator made some comments here at the State Emergency Operations Center with the governor today and said no resources will be pulled from North Carolina that are actively engaged. We are fully committed to response operations in Western North Carolina and in beginning the disaster recovery process, meaning our individual assistance program, opening disaster recovery centers for survivors. And we're committed to the long haul here in North Carolina, just because of the severity of the impacts. People really need help, and we're here to support the state and our local communities.
Just recently, we heard about the city of Greensboro offering up to state officials about the migrant facility that we have here in town that could possibly be used maybe for some Helene victims. What is the status now with FEMA possibly taking it over?
Our partners at the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services have offered the HHS facility to us, and we have begun some initial assessments of how the HHS facility might be used, but no decisions have been made. We are in the process of coming to an agreement with HHS over the possible use of the facility.
Okay, so it's still in process.
That's right, and I don't have anything to announce about that at this time. We are doing assessments about how it might be used.
Okay, and so a lot of people too are thinking, oh, a lot of my city and county workers are going to Western North Carolina. How does that work with how people are reimbursed, or cities or counties are reimbursed?
So under our public assistance program, which is help for state agencies and local governments, FEMA makes reimbursements through the state to local governmental entities that have very high disaster expenses for debris removal and emergency protective measures. Think about operating a shelter, having to clear debris off of roads and pick that up. So the president has directed FEMA to pay 100% of the cost for debris removal and emergency protective measures that local governments and state agencies and certain nonprofits are having to engage in, not just for 30 days, but for 180 days because of the extreme nature of Tropical Storm Helene in Western North Carolina. So we'll be working with local governments on their projects to help them get reimbursements to the state. So the way it works is when FEMA approves a project, we provide the money to state emergency management, which does a review of all the documentation, and then the state reimburses the local government. But what we're really prioritizing right now is we want local governments to start that expedited reimbursement process so we can try to get some expedited reimbursements into those coffers of local governments because they're going to need a lot of assistance. And this can help jumpstart not only recovery for survivors, but also overall communities that have very high disaster expenses for debris removal and emergency protective measures. We'll also be working over the long haul on restoration of publicly maintained infrastructure and facilities. And unfortunately, as you know, there's quite a lot of damage to roads, bridges, and things like that.
I know water is seemingly one of the biggest things too, not just the drinking water, but the water just to wash your clothes in, take a bath, all that kind of thing.
That's right. Oh, that is so true. And we are very mindful that it's been almost 2 weeks since this storm hit. And so that's why we're working with our partners at the American Red Cross. They have comfort stations set up at their shelters. We're also coordinating with the state potentially to bring in additional comfort stations for showers and laundry facilities in some of the affected areas, all in coordination with state emergency management and county emergency management at the local level.
All right, we have about a minute left or so. Someone is asking, if I've already started the cleanup process, can I still get help to cover my expenses?
I'm sorry, I didn't catch your question.
If they've already started cleaning up their house, are they still allowed to ask FEMA for help to cover their expenses?
Oh, yes, absolutely. In fact, we would encourage people to document their damage with photos, but do not hesitate. Don't wait to clean up. You can begin the process now. If you get contractor estimates, you can provide those to FEMA. We may be able to provide you with money for home repairs and to help begin the home replacement process. A number of households have already received tens of thousands of dollars in FEMA individual assistance money because they've gotten in touch with us and told us what their needs are and what their family is facing now.
Gotcha. Thank you so much for yet another update. We so appreciate it. John Mills there with FEMA in Raleigh. If you missed any of this, we're going to be posting it on our YouTube channel.